We are really honored to have two very special guests here today. His Eminence Kirti Rinpoche and Professor Robert Thurman with us at this time when the Tibetan people are going through this very difficult stage in our history. We have seen 11 cases of self-immolations in Tibet since March this year. And many of those cases have taken place. They have been connected to monks at the Kirti monastery, and Rinpoche is the head of the Kirti monastery in Tibet, and he has been based in India since 1959. And Professor Thurman has been teaching at Columbia University for a really long time, and he has been one of the most powerful and strongest advocates for the Tibetan people and for human rights and freedom in Tibet. So we're really grateful that he could join us today too. So Rinpoche and Professor Thurman will speak to address the issues of self-immolation taking place in Tibet and what are the causes of these self-immolations. What are the causes of the crisis in Tibet, and what can the global audience and what can people like us do to stem this crisis in Tibet?
And since the Chinese government imposed especially repressive policies on the Ngaba Kirti monastery, just as Mao Zedong once said, where there is oppression, there revolt will occur. That was the reason why those self-immolations happened those people who committed self-immolation were from the Ngaba Kirti monastery.
So there is a tradition in Buddhism of offering the body, and there is a tradition of offering it by fire. But Shantideva, in his chapter 5, his Shila chapter of the Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life, Junju, he says that if, which is a very unusual comment if you think about it, he says that if you are not motivated by compassion for all beings, then better not to give your body away, but to use your life to develop in other ways. And when the Tibetan gentleman from Dharamsala, whose name I am not remembering, who burned himself in New Delhi about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, Tuptengudur, that's right, Tuptengudur. His Holiness told me that he managed to visit him in the hospital before he died, when he was all bandaged up. And he whispered to him in the hospital, in his bandage, he said, His Holiness told me, that do not die with hatred for the Chinese in your heart, he said. And he nodded like that. Tuptengudur nodded like that. So it is, I think, very controversial. I remember when I was in Dharamsala, when I first met Rinpoche, in 1964, I was living in the house of Thai Rinpoche. And at that time, the Vietnamese monk, famous Vietnamese monk who we all saw the picture, he burned himself in protest of Vietnam War. And at that time, some lamas, I won't say which ones, were very against that. And they were saying, by doing that, he's destroying a deity. The body, he contained Buddhahood with body. And they were very, very against it. And some lamas are concerned about it because the Lotus Sutra example is not prominent in Tibetan Buddhism. They don't make a big thing about it. Right? In Chinese Buddhism in ancient times, some Chinese monks used to do that. And they would burn incense in their head, in their arms, and sometimes burn themselves. And actually, Fusho Samdong Rinpoche, the young Samdong Rinpoche at that time, he was on my side. I defended that Vietnamese monk. I honored him, and I felt it was very powerful what he did. Great gift to protest the war and the violence of the war. And I also honor the young nuns and monks who have done this in Kirti Monastery because of the very brave. It's no joke to light yourself on fire. Actually, in Vietnam, after that first monk did it, there were some Western monks, some French monks in the order, and they went and they got all ready, they lighted up, then they went, ow, and they went and jumped in canal. They wanted to put out the fire. They weren't able to do that. And that original monk was very developed, you know, and he was completely, and in a way, I think when they're so developed, it's not like suicide. Because it's giving away their body because their mind is involved in their heart and in their mind. They're identifying themselves as their mind. And so they're just leaving that body, and as soon as the shock knocks out their awareness, they've gone. And then they've shown the lesson that life under such oppression and under such violence is better not. So they give up the actual life. Now, the young monks and nuns, it is doubtful that they yet have achieved the ability like that old Vietnamese monk, where they could almost do it without pain because they're so developed. And so for them it was tremendous painful sacrifice. The young nun who we all see on the YouTube, she's standing there with the flame going like that. And the other nuns are screaming, and then she falls down. Tremendous bravery this is, and tremendous devotion. One of the other factors, I think, I have a friend who is an Italian journalist who is a big friend of Tibet and knowledgeable. And he says that the first monk to burn himself in Tibet was shortly after the Chinese government made a big propaganda that they were going to find the next Dalai Lama. So the monks were thinking, oh, even on top of this oppression, and on top of being forced to pay homage to the fake Panchen Lama, Panchen Duma of the Chinese government, now they're going to give us a Dalai Lama Duma in the future, a fake Dalai Lama. So they're very upset at that idea. That was intolerable for them. But the hope, we have to hope, is that they were not like a soldier, angry with the enemy, you know, with the Chinese, but rather out of compassion, trying to give a teaching that the life is not about material things, that life is not just to keep your body and get fat and take things from other people and take their lives, but life has some higher purpose. And therefore compassion was their motive. Like His Holiness said to the monk, to the man that took the Ngutram law in Delhi, we have to hope, but I don't know, you know, I don't know. Because if hatred was the motivation, then this is unfortunate for them, very unfortunate. However, recently His Holiness said that he didn't make much comment about it, but he said he didn't think it was effective as a tool of political protest. I read the quote. But he has to say that, because Chinese, he cannot express kind of admiration for such courage. Because Chinese government will say he's telling them to do it. It's a plot by Dalai Lama. You know, they always blame Dalai Lama. So he can't say that. But he didn't say, I don't want them to do it. You know, don't do it. Like Rinpoche also didn't say, I can forbid them to do that. Because they are free from it as far as His Holiness is concerned. And I'm sure His Holiness has great sorrow about it, but also admiration for these young people.